Hi everyone, my name is Quester. Welcome to the part 2 of the 12th episode of my unofficial program, Guild Wars for all levels for the game Gems of War. For today's episode, we're going to talk about hero weapons. This is a two-part episode. The first episode, when we discussed earlier, is a short overview of using hero weapons in Guild Wars. The second part, which I'm talking about right now, will be about dual color hero weapons and their viability in Guild Wars. So I will talk about each dual color weapon, and in my conclusion I will rank the best dual color weapons in the game. Before I get started, however, I want to mention that I will only be talking about weapons you can attain in the game without having to buy them with real money. All the weapons I'm going to show you are weapons that you can earn by leveling up your hero's masteries, weapons you can craft in the Soul Forge, and weapons you earn by completing certain quest lines. These are the weapons that you can gain without spending money. Old legacy weapons and purchased weapons won't be covered. There are also two weapons that I will mention at the end of the segments. These are the all-color weapons, and say the prismatic orb and the imperial jewel. These are all color weapons, and I'll talk about them at the end of this segment. So let's get started. Let's go start first with blue, and we go with blue-green. Alright, for blue-green we have three weapons. We have Arrow of Slaying, which deals damage to an enemy. In early game it's okay to use this weapon, but in late game the damage is low. In early game it might be high damage, but it's not that much in late game. And as you see, it also costs 18 mana to use this weapon, so it's a high cost weapon and the damage is low, so not a great weapon. And we have Ice Arrow here. It's only 14 mana cost, deals damage to enemy and deals double damage if they use red mana. In early game this can be useful, but in late game you want to skip this one. There are better weapons and better troops to use against red enemies. The damage won't be high, so that's Ice Arrow for you. And lastly we have Thingamabob. It deals damage to an enemy and adjacent enemies boosted by submerged allies at the ×7 ratio. So if you are running a team that does a lot of submerge, then this weapon can deal a good amount of damage, and because it will hit at least 3 enemies, at most, 3 enemies, so it will hit up to 3 enemies. And if you have 2 troops that are submerged, it'll deal a lot of damage. So it's good in early game and can be used in late game, although not a very strong weapon either. In late game, you probably won't be using this weapon, and I rarely see this weapon too in PvP. So in early to mid game, this weapon is okay. In late game, not so much. So among the three weapons, I would say Thingamabob is the best. So that would be blue-green weapons. Now let's go to blue-reds. Blue-reds, we have Kingslayer. It deals damage to enemy and deals 7 more damage if they have 10 or more attack. So in early game this can work. It deals a damage and deals a little more damage if they have 10 or more attack, but not gonna be powerful in late game. You would be avoiding to use this one. So next we have Undyne's Trident. It deals damage to an enemy and deals triple damage if they have submerged. Again, not a lot of troops you encounter in Guild Wars submerge themselves. Submerge is not a very powerful status effect, so this weapon may not be very useful because you don't encounter a lot of troops that are submerged. So, and the next one we have Vile Flask. It destroys an enemy's armor and does one of the following: either it poisons them or it deals damage. So this weapon you can use to destroy the armors of your enemy, but once they don't have armor anymore, you can either poison them or deal damage, which you can't predict which of the two is gonna happen. And once you poison them, you don't have to poison them again unless they cleanse themselves. But once they're poisoned, doing poison to them won't do anything. So once all the enemy troops' armors are gone, this weapon becomes useless. You can't predict if it's gonna poison or deal damage to them, and poison itself is not a very powerful status effect. So with blue reds, I would say the most useful one would be Vile Flask. It would be the better of the three, but these weapons are not powerful. So okay, let's move on to the next weapons. With blue-yellow, we have Lion and Tiger and Soul Blade. Lion and Tiger pulls a troop to the first place, it deals damage to them, and it stuns them. This one I've actually used in late game Guild Wars. It's an okay weapon. What I like about it is because it messes up the team synergy of the enemy by moving them around. You actually get to pull someone else, some other troop to first slot, so you can pull the weak one to the first slot, and then you stun them and deal damage to them, and then your frontline tank can kill that enemy. So this is actually a useful weapon. And then you have Soul Blade. Soul Blade does damage to enemy, and then you gain 10 souls. This is only useful if you're soul farming, and there are better soul farmers out there like Valkyrie. So, I wouldn't really feel that you would need to use this weapon. It deals so-so damage, and then you're only gaining 10 souls. Other troops can do better than that. So between the two of these weapons, I would say you'd want to go with Lion and Tiger if you're running a yellow-blue hero. Okay, next up, blue-purple. Blue-purple, we have 4 weapons. We have Eye of Sathinos. This one you craft in the Soul Forge. It deals damage to an enemy and steals 5 from a random stat. Deals triple damage if the target is Fey. Okay, so damage itself is not big, and while it does deal 5 from a random stat, it's a random stat. It would be better if it steals 5 from magic, let's say, or from attack. So it's not really a game changer effect. And there are not a lot of Fays you encounter in Guild Wars. I mean, Fays can be popular, but not that popular. So this weapon is very situational. You use this if there are a lot of Fays in enemy troops, but the damage itself is not that great. So even if you do a triple amount of damage, it might not be that big of a damage. So you want to get this weapon only if you want to craft Sathinos. Otherwise, you can skip on this weapon. Okay, next up we have Ice Dagger. Ice Dagger deals damage to enemy and deals 10 more damage if the enemy is frozen, and then you freeze the enemy. Now, freezing the enemy is good because you're gonna make them miss their extra turns. But the damage is not that great, and 10 additional damage, while it's good in early game, it pales in late game. It's not that big of a damage, so you won't see this weapon in late game. It's okay in early game, and that's about it. At least it can freeze an enemy. Next up, Merchant's Blade. It deals damage to an enemy. Then you have 50% chance of either 20 souls, 100 gold, or 1 treasure map. I would say this weapon, you use this if you're farming for resources, but in Guild Wars, you want to skip this because your point is not to farm for resources while you're trying to win in Guild Wars. And then next up we have Phylactery. This one is actually a useful weapon. You can use this with a Dragon Guard class. It doesn't matter if it's not a brown weapon because you don't, you gain extra souls with it. But in Guild Wars, you want to use this with the Dragon Guard class because the Dragon Guard class has holy armor, so it's useful as a frontline tank. So if you're using your hero as a frontline tank, you want to use this weapon because it restores your life to full. So you'll always have full life as a tank, and then you gain an extra turn. You don't necessarily use this weapon for gaining souls. Again, there are other troops that do soul gaining better, but its use is it's useful in early game and in late game. Actually, you can use this as a tank. You don't see this weapon though much in late game. You see Dawnbringer more, but early to mid game you can use this weapon if you need a beefy tank. So, and among all of these weapons, then I would say Phylactery is the better weapon. Okay, next up, let's go to blue-brown. For blue-brown, we have two weapons. We have Bronzestock Pistol. It deals damage to enemy. It destroys 5 random gems boosted by gold collected at a 4-to-1 ratio. So this weapon is actually useful if you are with a team that maximizes its gold. Say you use this troop with Goggin Good, which is a green-brown troop, so they work well with brown colors. So you can use this weapon in a brown team with Goggin Good, and you can easily end up with 100 gold. So with 100 gold divided by 4, you have 25, and 25 plus 5, you end up with 30 random gems destroyed. So this weapon you could do a lot of mana generation, but there are other mana generators out there that are more reliable than this weapon. So it's okay as a mana generator if you're using a gold farm team, but I don't think it's gonna be useful in Guild Wars because it's very specific at what needs to happen so that you can generate mana with it. And then we have Shaker's Heart. It creates 7 red gems and cleanses all allies. Then it gives a random ally life. So 7 red gems, not a lot of red gems that you spawn. Most of the time this is gonna miss, and you probably end up helping your enemies more than helping yourself with this. And while it cleanses all enemies, which is all allies, which is good. The random life that it gives is small, and it's to a random ally. So it gives you a fixed amount of life, but to a random ally. So you can't even target like your weakest ally, the ally that needs it the most. So I'd say between these two weapons, Bronzestock Pistol is the one to go if you're using blue-brown, but I would say just choose another troop. You don't have to use these weapons. Okay, next up, let's go with green. And with green, let's go with green-blue. And we've already talked about green-blue, and Thingamabob is the better weapon among all of them. Now we go with green-red. Green-red, you have two weapons, not powerful though. You have Bull's Edge, which deals damage and deals extra, and then you gain 6 attack if you are damaged. So in early game, this can be useful if you're using your hero as a frontline tank. 6 attack in early game is a good amount, but in late game it's negligible. The damage it does is small, and the attack it gains is small in late game, so you want to skip this one. Fiery Claw, it deals damage to an enemy, deals double damage if they use blue mana. You have better troops that actually deal more damage. They can do triple damage to an enemy if they use a certain color. So you want to focus on them more. The damage it does is not that great, and even though you double it in late game, it's a damage that you can pass up, especially for 14 mana. You know, you can go ahead and skip this weapon. So in red greens, I would say the better of the two would be Fire Claw, but both of them are not that powerful, not good. So you can skip them. Okay, green yellow. We have 3 weapons we can discuss. We have Pan's Loot. This one, it drains mana of the first and last enemies, then gives all allies 1 magic. So the mana drain is good if you're focusing on mana drain. It does not do damage though, and the magic gives is small. You know, you need to gain more magic quicker, so it would have a more effect. So it's strategic, but it's better if it does damage to an enemy too. It only drains the manas of enemies, first and last enemies, so you know you can disable your enemies this way, but wish it drained more enemies than that. But first and last, not that bad, so it's okay. It's an okay weapon. Next up, we have Runic Blade. It deals damage to an enemy, then gain 10 to all skills if the enemy dies. Now, this is particularly powerful in early game and in arena. In early game, 10 to all skills. If the enemy dies, is a lot. Your enemy would be having a hard time catching up to you. So in late game though, you want to pass up on this one. The damage it does is not that big, and 10 to all skills in late game is not that big either. So while it's a powerful weapon in early and mid game, it does not do well in late game. Next up, we have Sun Disc. It's a yellow-green weapon. Gives all yellow allies 5 attack, then deals damage to all purple enemies. Then it does summon a random storm. So this weapon you could use in Guild Wars Defense because it targets like purple enemies. So in Purple Day, you can definitely damage all your enemies. The attack it gives though is negligible, especially in late game. In early game could be useful, but it's only 5 attack, you know, and it'll be better if it concentrated all its attack on the first troop. But you know, it's okay, and it's only to yellow allies, so it's not that great. And then the storm that it summons is random, so it could not be even a color that you use. And if the enemy has exploders, they'll be able to take advantage of the storm that you created, so it could work against you. So again, this weapon would be good in PV in defense, in Guild Wars Defense, but you wouldn't want to use this weapon in offense. Okay, next up we have green purple. We have 2 weapons. Cursed Blade, which deals damage to an enemy equal to its attack. Now it's only useful if the enemy has a high attack. If the enemy has a low attack, for 12 mana cost, you know, there are weapons that can deal better damage. And in late game, you know, 12 mana cost just to cause a troop to deal damage to itself, it's not that big, so you want to skip this. And then you have Pearl of Wisdom. It creates 7 gems of a chosen type, submerge a random ally and give them 1 magic. Again, submerge isn't really a powerful status effect, you know. It's not a powerful positive effect, and it submerges a random ally, so it's random, you know, and gives them only 1 magic. So, and then 7 gems. Again, you're gonna miss with 7 gems. Even though you get to choose what type of color, chances are you're gonna miss unless there are a lot of gems of that color. So not that great. So if I have to choose between the two, I would go with Pearl of Wisdom, but again, not that great weapons. Okay, next up, green brown. Green brown, we have 2 weapons. We have Cauldron, doubles an ally's attack and gives them 20s and gives them life. So this one is actually useful. Say if you have War or Ketras the Bull in your team, those two troops they depend on their attack to increase their damage. So if you're doubling their attack, that would be actually great, especially if you use it on War. So this weapon could be useful to synergize with, and yeah, because it doubles an ally's attack. So you could have a frontline attack that can really be offensive because you can double its attack. So useful weapon. And then you have War and Peace. It deals damage to all enemies and gives allies 2 attack. So the damage itself, while not that high, it's good because it damages all enemies. And okay, we just wait for the Japanese to finish. Sorry. Okay. It deals damage to all enemies, and then the 2 attack it gives, while in early game it's okay, in late game it's not that much. 2 attack, oh no, in late game. So the attack damage to all enemies is pretty good though. You can use this with the Dragon Guard class, and the Dragon Guard, because it has the last trait that gives plus additional magic and life to all allies on extra turn matches. You'll end up like with a high damage with this weapon. So this weapon is actually good, and if I have to choose between the 2 of them, I would choose War and Peace. Okay, now let's go to red and red blue. We already discussed what weapons to use. I would say Vile Flask would be the better weapon, but red blue weapons aren't that great. Then red green weapons aren't that great either. I would choose Fire Club, but again, not that great. Then we have red yellow. We have Dragon Fire. It mana burns an enemy boosted by your magic, and it burns them. If the enemy dies, you get to transform into a random dragon. So interesting weapon, not that great in Guild Wars. And the reason I say this, that even though you can mana burn an enemy, and mana burn can be high damaging, burn isn't that powerful in late game. And also, if the enemy dies, you could transform into a dragon that is not powerful. Mind you, if you transform into World Breaker, great. But if you transform to, say, Dragon Moth or to Silver Dracon, well, not a very strong troop, so could work against you. Okay, and next up we have Golden Cog. What it does, it doubles an ally's armor. This is actually a useful weapon because for say you have troops like Rowan, and Rowan's damage is boosted by her armor. If you double her armor, she's gonna create a lot of damage, so that'll be good if you use a Rowan. Unfortunately, Rowan doesn't share colors with this weapon, so you may not be using this weapon that much for Guild Wars, but it's an okay weapon. You might find a troop that gains buffs if you double their armor, but the only troop that I can think of is Rowan, and possibly Paladin. Yes, Paladin is actually yellow-green, so you can use this with Paladin. So if I have to choose between the 2 of these weapons, I would go with Golden Cog. Okay, next up we have red-purple. Red-purple, we have 3 weapons we can discuss. We have Burning Seath. It deals damage to all enemies, then burns a random and diseases another enemy. So the damage to all enemies is small. That's probably half the damage it does. And burn is not that powerful in late game. And the disease is not also a powerful status effect. So I would say this weapon is okay in early game. Avoid this in late game. Next up, we have Death Knell. It deals damage to the weakest enemy, gain an extra turn. Again, this is good in early game. but in late game not so great because the damage it does is small. In late game, at least it does an extra turn, but yeah, you want to skip this in late game. And then we have Heart of Sathinos. It deals some damage to all enemies. It deathmark all divines and disease all knights. So this one is situational. The damage it does is minimal. It's not that big of a damage like Burning Seath, but it can deathmark all divines, and the divines are actually popular in late game. You see a lot of mythics that are divine, but you don't see a lot of knights. So I would say this weapon is situational. If I have to choose between all three of them, I would go with the Heart of Sathinos, but again, that's a situational weapon. Red, purple are not great weapons, so you don't have to use them in Guild Wars. Okay, red, brown. Red, brown, we have three weapons we can discuss. We have Anvil of Might, which gives an ally 26 attack and some attack and armor. So it gives an ally attack and armor by a certain amount. So this one actually is useful again if you are using this on like troops like Rowan and say Ketras the Bull and War, because it gives, especially Ketras the Bull, because Ketras the Bull gains buff from attack and armor. So yeah, you can definitely use this with some of those troops. Not particularly powerful, but more useful than the other weapons. Then we have Hammer Urskea. It deals damage to an enemy and half of that damage to adjacent enemies, then it enrages the first ally. So in early game, this is powerful. It deals like a big amount of damage to an enemy, and then half of that to adjacent enemies, and then it enrages the first ally. So that's good. You want your first ally to be enraged. Enrage is actually a good status effect, so it's an okay weapon. And then next up we have Mang. Mang destroys an enemy's armor, and then it deals damage. It increases your attack by the amount of armor destroyed. This is actually a powerful weapon. So if you get to destroy the enemy's armor and then you deal damage to it, so essentially it's like true damage, except you also take away their armor. So it's a powerful weapon that way, and then you boost your armor by the attack, your attack by the amount of armor destroyed. So yes, then your attack gets really big. So if you're using him as a frontline tank, then you have a really strong tank. So this is a powerful weapon. You could definitely use this in Guild Wars. This is also effective in late game, although not a lot of people use this, but this is a powerful weapon. Okay, and among these three weapons, I definitely go for Mang. Alright, now let's go to yellow. Yellow blue, we already talked about it. I would say you go with Lion and Tiger. Yellow green, I already talked about it. You would want to go with Runic Blade. Yellow and red, you want to go with Golden Cog. Now yellow and purple, we have three weapons. We have the Dream Catcher. It deals damage randomly split amongst enemies, deals 10 more damage if the enemy has a Fey troop. So this is actually a weak weapon. The damage it does is small and it's spread out to all enemies, so it's a small damage randomly split amongst enemies. And there's an extra amount of damage if the enemy has a Fey troop, but it's only 10. So there's a lot more weapons you could use that can deal consistent amount of damage that is higher than this weapon. So you want to skip this one. Emerald tier, you gain some life, and then you create 5 green gems boosted by enchanted allies by ×3 ratio. The life that it gives you is not much, and 5 green gems is definitely gonna miss. If you have one enchanted ally, it's gonna create 8 green gems. So 8 green gems, again, not a lot. You can miss with that one. And so you would need your entire troop to be enchant, your entire team to be enchant for this weapon to be viable. And there isn't a thing that enchants all team members very well. So there isn't like a troop that enchants all enemies. Well, there is a weapon that can do it, but then again, you're already using a weapon, so then you can't use 2 weapons in a team. You either only use one weapon or another, and there isn't a troop that can enchant all allies, so this one doesn't get used. It's interesting, but it doesn't have a lot of synergy. So yeah. And then we have Soul of Sathinos. Soul of Sathinos, what it does, it deals damage to an enemy boosted by souls collected, and then it steals their mana. So this one is actually a powerful weapon. I would say this weapon, you want to use this if you say you have a team that collects souls, like say Dragon Soul. Dragon Soul is red purple, so this one will work in an all purple team. So if you have a lot of souls, you could pretty much you can one shot an enemy with this weapon, and then on top of that you steal their mana. So this is actually a good weapon. I would say you can use this in Guild Wars even in late game. Okay, so if I have to choose between all 3 weapons, I would go for the Soul of Sathinos. You can craft this one in the Soul Forge. Okay, and next weapon, go with yellow brown. Yellow brown, we have 4 weapons we can discuss. We have Blades of Sands. It deals damage to the last enemy. If there is a dust storm, it removes all green gems and then creates a dust storm. So this one you could actually use on Guild Wars defense, but it's not really that particularly good in defense, because the reason is you have to cast this weapon twice to remove all green gems. First you have to summon the dust storm, and then you have to cast it again to remove all green gems, and that takes a while to make it happen, and by the time you could be losing already on defense. So the damage it does is okay, but the other things it does is not so great. Possibly an early game defense, but was not gonna use this on offense. Okay, next one is Dust and Sand. It knocks a target troop to the front, reduces armor of all enemies by a certain amount. So it does not deal damage, it reduces all their armor though. The armor reduced is pretty big to all enemies, but once all enemies don't have armor anymore, then it does nothing. What at least it does, it knocks a target troop to the front. So you can mess up with their team synergy by messing up with their formation, but it does not deal direct damage, so not very useful. Limited use, so it's okay. It's not that great. Next up, we have the Holy Symbol. It deals damage to enemy, deals double damage if they use purple mana. This is a purple counter, but you could use another weapon that can deal more damage to purple enemies. Sun Disc I would say Sun Disc is better than this weapon. Sun Disc at least hits all enemies. This one, the damage it does to an enemy is not that big, and even if you double it in late game, that's not gonna kill. So yes, not that great. Next up, we have Erskine Crown. What does it? It creates 9 red gems and it summons a random Urska troop. This one actually you can use in Guild Wars as a summoner. So it's comparable to Corrupt Sorceress. Corrupt Sorceress creates red gems too and summons either an anointed one or a remnant. This one, you could use this in Guild Wars as a summoner. 9 red gems is actually decent. Chances are it's gonna connect better than say 7 red gems. So the gems it summons is good enough that it will connect. But the troop that it summons is an Urska, and Urskas are not particularly powerful. So unless you summon King Mikael or Doomclaw, the Urska you're gonna summon is not gonna be that great. So at least in Guild Wars in early game and in mid game you can use this weapon. In late game though, you want to skip this. So of all of these weapons, I would say the better one is the Urskian Crown. Okay, and now we go with purple. Purple blue, I already discussed this. Phylactery is the better one. Purple green, Pearl of Wisdom. Purple red, I would say Heart of Sathinos. Purple yellow, Soul of Sathinos. Now purple and brown. Purple and brown, we have Black Manacles. It deals damage to all enemies, and then there's a 20% chance to devour a random enemy. This is actually a really good weapon. It deals a decent amount of damage to all enemies, and there's 1 out of 5 chance that you're gonna devour a random enemy. And at times this will connect and you get to devour a random enemy, and good for you. So I like this weapon. It's also only 15 mana cost, so this is an all-around weapon that you can use, especially if you have a Dragon Guard class. A Dragon Guard will give you more damage. So, and Dragon Guard, you can boost your magic, so definitely works well. So this is a good weapon. And then we have a Null Sphere. It reduces an enemy's magic to 0. It's a high mana cost though, 18, just to reduce an enemy's magic to 0. So this is like disabling them. You're not damaging them. You're making sure that they cost less damage to you. But because of the high mana cost, it'll take a while before you can reduce an enemy's mana, and by the time they've already done a lot of damage to you. So you won't see this weapon being used in late game, and even in early game, because of the high mana cost, you'd rather go with like something else. So I would say if you're gonna use a brown purple weapon, you go with Black Manacles. Okay, and I believe I discussed all color weapons, so that would be it. So if I had to choose the best weapons of all the dual color weapons, I would say the Runic Blade goes at number 4, and then the number 3 we have War and Peace. Number 2 we have Mang, and number 1 we have the best weapon, dual color weapon, I would say is the Black Manacles. Okay, and before I end my show, I'll talk about the all color weapons, the Imperial Jewel and Prismatic Orb. Now these weapons, they're situational if you want to use them. Because they're all colors, you want to use your hero at the last spot, because if you use this one on the front, it's gonna block all the colors. So if it blocks all your fellow troops won't be able to gain mana. So definitely want to put this, you will use your hero in the last slot if you're using these weapons. Between the two of them though, I would say Prismatic Orb is the better one, because it spawns gems at a chosen ally's mana color. So you can definitely, the amount of gems it creates is okay. And then the ally gains armor, so it works well with say Guard's Avatar or Ruan. So this weapon works well with them. And Imperial Jewel, not very powerful. It deals a small amount of split damage and then gains 2 magic. So Unless you're using this one with a Bard class with Scorpius, it's okay, but in other cases, it's not a powerful weapon, so you want to skip it. So if I have to choose between two, you want to go with Prismatic Orb. Now, the problem with all color weapons is if you get frozen with this one, then you're frozen on all colors. So even if your hero is the only one frozen, all colors is going to be affected. So that's the drawback to using all color weapons. Okay, so that's it. Thank you for tuning in to our program. Next episode, I'll be discussing defenses now. So now I'll be focusing more on Guild Wars, directly talking about Guild Wars attack teams, talking about Guild War defense teams. And next episode, I will talk about how to defend against mana drain troops. So you can tune in for that one. Thank you again for tuning in for this episode. Appreciate that you are hearing me out, and thank you. Have a good day. Later.